This is Hero Chapter 5. Ben, are you still asleep up there? Ben bolted upright, confused about why he was fully dressed on his bed. His math notebook was open on his lap, and his pencil had fallen on the floor. The light was on. He'd fallen asleep doing his homework. He checked his alarm clock. He was late for school, and his vocab quiz was first period. Ben, I'm coming, Mom. Ben leaped out of bed and changed his clothes as quickly as he could. He threw his backpack over his shoulder and raced downstairs. Hero lay on the kitchen floor, and Scout was out of his crate. Ben zipped past them and dumped some kibble in their bowls. Hero ate slowly, picking up a bite of food and stepping away from his bowl while chewing it. Scout, on the other hand, scarfed his food down in record time. Out of the corner of his eye, he grabbed his lunch from the fridge. Ben saw Hero stop eating and push his bowl toward Scout. Scout happily dug into the last of Hero's kibble. Hero looked over at Ben and wagged his tail, ready for his usual morning walk. "Sorry, Hero," Ben said. "I'm late for school, but I'll take you for an extra long walk later. I promise." Hero's tail dropped as Ben headed for the door without him. "Take care of Scout today." Ben got to school after the last bell had already rung. He raced down the empty hallway, breathing hard from riding his bike so fast. He pushed on the classroom door too hard. It banged open, and every kid in Mr. Stein's English class looked up from their quiz. "So much for a quiet entrance." "It's not like you to be late for a quiz, Ben," his teacher whispered. Is everything all right? You can take the quiz after school, okay?" Ben exhaled with relief. "Thanks, Mr. Stein," he said, catching his breath. "I'm fine, just late. Maybe this day wouldn't be that bad after all." Ben sank into a seat to wait out the rest of the period. Noah shot him a sympathetic look from his spot across the room. Ben felt someone looking at him and turned to the kid on his right. It was the new kid, Jack, who'd moved to Gulfport last semester, right before the holiday break. Ben made eye contact and nodded. Jack nodded back. Ben had heard a rumor that Jack played shortstop at his old middle school. Varsity, no less. Ben also knew that there was only one open spot for shortstop this year, which meant his biggest competition was going to be Jack. "Jack," Mr. Stein called out from the front of the class. "Keep your eyes to yourself, please." "Sorry," Jack said. He turned back to his quiz, but not before scowling at Ben. Ben was taken aback. Why was Jack mad at him? It wasn't his fault Jack had been staring at him. All Ben had done was look up and nod. After sixth period, Ben pushed through a steady stream of kids in the hall and back to Mr. Stein's classroom. He hefted his backpack loaded with heavy textbooks onto one shoulder. He felt a solid thwack as it hit someone hard. Ben spun around to see who he clobbered with his books. An apology already spilling from his lips. It was Jack. He stood at his locker, rubbing his shoulder where Ben had hit him. "Oh, sorry, Jack," Ben said. I didn't mean to." Jack squinted at Ben, his face unreadable. He opened his mouth as if to speak. Ben waited for him to say something like, "It's okay," or "No worries." But Jack just stared at him, snapped his mouth shut, and turned back to his open locker without a word. Okay," Ben muttered to himself. "That was awkward." But he didn't have time to wonder what Jack's problem was. He had to make up his English quiz, which he totally hadn't studied for. As he hustled toward Mr. Stein's room, Noah appeared at his side. "What happened to you this morning?" I overslept." "Ben Landry never oversleeps," Noah teased him. "Ben Landry is always on time for like everything." "I stayed up late playing with Scout, the puppy, and Hero." "If I had a puppy, I'd stay up late too," Noah said, a hint of envy in his voice. "I'm so psyched to meet him." "Well, you'll have to get approval from Hero first," Ben said. "He's completely nuts about Scout. It's like Scout is the puppy he never had or something." "Really?" Noah said. "I wouldn't have guessed Hero was the puppy type." "Are we still on for training today?" he asked. Ben said. "Batting practice, duh." "Oh, right," Ben replied. His mom had promised to come back and let Scout out of his cage on her lunch break, so he knew the puppy would be fine. "Yes, I'll be there, but I have to take that quiz first. Why don't I come over to meet Scout after we hit a few balls?" "Sure thing. You can help me with him too, Ben said as he stepped into his English classroom. Cool, Noah said with a wave. Whiskey, stop. I'm really sorry about this morning, Ben said to Mr. Stein as he sat down at a desk. I've never missed a quiz before. I know, the teacher said. That's why you're getting a second chance. Not everyone would, but you're not the kind of student to take advantage, Ben. Mr. Stein came over and placed the quiz on Ben's desk. Then he wandered back to the front of the classroom and started grading papers. Ben made his way down the page, yawning and struggling to remember the vocabulary words. Somehow he powered through it. He thanked Mr. Stein as he handed over the piece of paper and crossed his fingers his wouldn't fail. The halls were empty and quiet by the time he was done. Ben stepped through the school's heavy front doors and found Hero sitting on the stairs, where he'd waited for Ben every day. Ben gave the dog a scratch on the head. Come on, Hero! Ben hopped on his bike and headed over to the ball field to meet Noah. Hero, trotting by his side. Noah wasn't there yet. At least there was one thing Ben hadn't been late for today. He pulled his mitt from his backpack and started to warm up. He threw the ball deep into the outfield. Hero raced after it, picking it up and ran it back to him. For the first time since he'd opened his eyes that morning, Ben started to relax. Hi, said a boy's voice from behind the backstop. Ben turned and saw Jack. Hi, he said. He wasn't at all sure how he felt about this new kid. He couldn't tell if Jack was shy or rude or just kind of uncomfortable. But he knew he should try to give Jack the benefit of the doubt. It must be hard to move somewhere new. And Jack probably wanted to be shortstop as badly as Ben. They would be good sports about it. Hero ran back. The ball clamped firmly between his teeth and dropped it at Ben's feet. Ben scratched Hero behind the ears and picked up the ball. That's a cool dog, Jack said, eyeing Hero intently. What's his name? Hero, Ben said after a pause. Something felt off about the way Jack watched the dog. Brody, you want me to pitch to you? Jack asked Ben. That seems like it's the one thing your dog can't do. Ben hesitated. Jack was hot and cold. He'd been weird earlier in the day. But now he suddenly wanted to practice together. Ben felt a little prickle of suspicion, but he pushed the thought away. Plus, there was still a sign of Noah, and he really needed to practice. Okay, sure. Ben wiped the slobber off the ball and handed it to Jack. If he was a new kid at a new school, he'd want Jack to treat him with friendship and respect, Ben told himself. Jack jogged up to the mound and shook off his arm a little. Ben picked up his bat and took a couple of warm-up swings. Ready? Jack called out. Ben nodded. He raised the bat behind him and bent his knees, dropping into a hitting stance. The ball whizzed toward him. He swung and missed. The kid had a good arm. Hero grabbed the ball and ran it over to Jack. Hero, go, Ben said, tilting his head in the direction of the backstop. He didn't want Hero to get hit by a stray ball or a foul tip. Hero ran behind the chain link fence and watched as Ben prepared to swing again. Jack threw a few more pitches and Ben got his hits off them all. He was feeling pretty good, and Noah rode up on his bike and stood behind the backstop with Hero. Hey, Ben, he said. Hey, Noah. Ben replied without turning around. He was trying to give Jack all his focus. Hi, Jack, Noah called out to the boy on the mound. Jack nodded at Noah but didn't speak to him. Let's hit one more, Ben said to Jack. Then I'll go practice with Noah, okay? Whatever you want, Jack said. You warmed up. Seemed like a weird question to Ben. Hadn't he just hit a whole bunch of balls? Obviously, he was warmed up. Ben lowered his bat, looked at Jack for a minute. He was too far away to be sure, but Ben thought he saw an odd look on the other boy's face. He almost looked disappointed. Was it because Noah was there and Ben was going to practice with him instead? Ben shook his head. It just had been a weird day. His mind was playing tricks on him. All ready, Ben said. Jack wound up and released the ball. Ben started to swing, but something was wrong. The ball was coming in too fast and too high. It was aimed right at his head. Hit the dirt, Noah yelled from behind him. Ben's reflexes kicked in faster than his brain could process what was happening. He ducked. The ball was so close to his head that he heard it whiz past his ear and felt it ruffle his hair. The ball slammed into the chain link fence behind him, and Hero raced around the front barking angrily. Noah ran after him and grabbed him by the collar. Adrenaline shot through Ben's body, following closely by outrage. He threw the bat down on the ground. What was that for? He yelled at Jack. was lame, Jack, Noah yelled at the same time. He stood next to Ben, still holding on to Hero, a low growl rumbling in Hero's throat. I guess my arm just is not very good. Sorry, man, Jack shrugged. Ben clenched his hands into fist. Your aim does not stink, dude, he shouted. Didn't you just do that on purpose? Noah gripped his shoulder with a firm hand. You know what, Ben, Noah said, his voice forced into a sounding calm. He's not worth it. Ignore him. Noah was right. Ben clamped his mouth shut, which wasn't easy. Hero stood close to Ben's side, protecting him. He was still growling. Quiet, Hero, Ben said soothingly, resting a hand on his dog's head. Thanks for looking out for me, pal. Good dog. Let's go, Noah said, turning his back on Jack. I need to meet Scout anyway. Okay. Ben picked up his bat. He started to leave, Hero shadowing him. Aw, come on. We were just getting started, Jack yelled from the mound. Let's hit some more. That is, if your dog says it's okay. Ben shook his head and took a few deep breaths to calm himself. What was this kid's problem? Nah, I'm good, thanks, Ben said through gritted teeth. I think you've done enough for one day. Tell you what, Jack went on. One more at bat. If I strike you out, I get your dog. Ben didn't even bother to respond. That was a ridiculous thing for Jack to say. He would never bet Hero for anything. What kind of person would do something like that? Without a backward glance, Ben tucked his bat and his mitt under his arm and walked off the field with Noah and Hero at his side. All right, that concluded chapter 5 of Hero. All right, let's be ready this week sometime, and we'll talk about it in our Linda Moobell sessions, okay? Thank you, guys. Bye now.